Welcome friends, it is I, LostScarf, and it's time for the Beginner's Guide to Vamana. Now as always, the idea here is to give you a beginner's idea on how to play a god, and this time it's Vamana, how to play in Conquest and Arena, how to build him, the do's and don'ts with him, and his weaknesses and stuff like that, to give you a good idea on what you should need to do as Vamana to help you just do well with him, and later on down the line you'll find advanced and expert things to do with him on your own. So if you're an advanced player or an expert already, might not be a lot to help you out here, but definitely beginners, if you don't know how to play Vamana, this will definitely be good for you. So let's get going! So who is Vamana? Well, Vamana is the 5th avatar of Vishnu. He loves Mai Tais and being really freaking hard to kill. Vamana is a warrior who gets stronger with the more physical armor he wears, and because of this, he can be both hard to kill and hard to survive. If you want to be annoying as hell in a lane, Vamana's the baby for you. Abilities. First up is Vamana's passive, Sleeping Giant. 20% of Vamana's physical protection is converted to physical power. Maximum possible is 320 physical protection, so 20% of that is 65 physical power. What this means is, the tankier you get, the harder you hit. His first ability is called Clear the Path. Vamana runs forward and knocks up all enemies in his path. You can direct it using your mouse and end it early with right click. You can use this to get in or get out very quickly. Vamana's second ability is called Armored Umbrella. What happens is he does damage in a cone in front of him. That's it. It just hits really hard. Vamana's third ability is called Umbrella Ring. What happens is he throws his umbrella out like a boomerang, and it's a skill shot, so you can hit targets twice with this, that includes minions, so this is your main form of clearing, so it's usually the first ability you should max because of that when you're doing laning. What's also nice about this is, it slows down an opponent by 30% in attack speed and movement speed for 3 seconds, so this is a good way to set things up for later combos. Vamana's ultimate is called Colossal Fury, and this is what it's all about for Vamana. It does a lot of things, and here's what it is. Vamana grows in size, and he gains protections, physical power, and his basic attack becomes a large AoE stomp. He also gains CC immunity, and he regens 5% of his HP per second for a minimum of 6 seconds. Why I say minimum is because if he gets hit by enemy gods, he gains another 0.5 seconds to his ultimate, up to 10 seconds maximum. So that means he can regen up to 50% of his HP during his ultimate. He can also use actives during the ultimate as well. So with the help of actives, and just all around the damage he can do, he can take down towers and enemy gods very well during his ultimate, and that's what makes him so deadly. Vamana in Conquest. Now for beginners you should play him in the solo lane. You can play him advanced mid, but really the solo lane is where he's the most comfortable. Vamana is known by some people as a stalemate god because he's so hard to kill, and this is really the way you should be playing him. You should be playing him kind of defensive in your battles in the solo lane to frustrate your opponent. So to do that, you should be maxing your Umbrella Ring first, because Umbrella Ring will clear out lanes very early on in the game, and you should be building counter to your opponent, so magical defense towards a magical god, physical defense against a physical god. And with that, your opponent will have a hard time killing you. They'll get frustrated and they'll get aggressive. When they get aggressive, they will make mistakes, and you can find a way to kill them. There are aggressive Vamanas, but you should not be an aggressive Vamana until later on when you learn how to play them better. Then you'll know how to work your opponent even harder and how to beat them down sooner. Now, if your opponent is also defensive to the point that you're both stalemating that lane, then it's okay. The longer the match goes, the more you build up, the stronger you get. Because later on, at level 20, when Vamana does his ultimate, he's capable of destroying towers on his own. That's what's so great about Vamana. And also, he's capable of just being a big nuisance in a team fight. So keep that in mind. You're playing for the long game, not the short game. You want to win this game in the end, not at the early game. You're not that kind of god. And some things you should keep in mind is you should get a Hasten Fatalist at some point, because with Hasten, you can stick to your opponent and beat them to death when you have your ultimate on, or get an active that helps you utilize that as well. Maybe Weakening Curse, or maybe Heavenly Agility. Those can both help you out as well, if you don't go for Hasten Fatalist. The do's and don'ts of Vamana. First up are the do's. You should be using your passive to your advantage, which means buying physical protection. The more physical protection you get, the stronger you are, so that's always good to do. Another thing is you should get an active or an item to take advantage of your ultimate as soon as possible. That means a Hasten Fatalist, maybe a Sprint, or a Weakening Curse. Something like that to slow down your opponent or speed you up so you can beat down your opponent with your ultimate. Another thing you should do with your ultimate is hit an opponent with your Umbrella Ring before you do your ultimate, because it will slow them down by 30% for 3 seconds. That will allow you to wail on them with your ultimate, and that's always good to do. Also, you should keep in mind that your dash should be used defensively. You should be using it to escape or to interrupt your opponent because there's a knockup on it, and that's very useful there. And lastly, you should remember that you can use actives during your ultimate, and actives make Vamana's ultimate so much better, and that's just great when you do it. Now for don'ts, you don't want to waste Vamana's ultimate on an enemy with anti-healing, that'd be Weakening Curse, or Changa with a Divine Ruin. That's a 90% reduction to healing right there, because Vamana will be in trouble if he's not healing during his ultimate, so don't waste it on that. Another thing to not waste it on is don't waste an ultimate on a god with an escape. If they just leap away, then you're not going to hit anything, and, well, that's a big waste. And lastly, do not think you're invincible during your ultimate. You regen 50% of your HP at maximum. That's it. You can be killed, even with all that regen, if there's no anti-healing going on. So don't think you're invincible. Just think you're going to be harder to kill. So how should you be building Vamana? Well, the trick to Vamana is you should be counter building right from the start, but if you don't know what your opponent is at the start, then you should probably go for level 2 warrior boots, and then get some potions and an active or just a bunch of potions, up to you. Now, if you have a pretty good idea what you'll be dealing with, then you can go level 1 on the boots and level 1 on whatever you're going to start counter building with, and then actives and potions or just potions. But what should you be building as a counter? Well, it depends what you're fighting. For hunters, Witchblade. With a Witchblade, your opponents will be shooting slower and they'll be doing less physical power, and that'll be very useful to you, and you can also catch up to them and beat on them if you want. Now, if you're fighting an assassin or warrior, Breastplate of Valor can give you a lot of protection, cooldown, and mana, or if you want to be really harassy, Mystical Mail. This will allow you to clear lanes kinda well, and you can stick to your opponent and just hit them a lot. That's nice there. But if you're fighting a magical god, well, if you want to stalemate the lane, then Stone a Guy. It'll make you nearly impossible to kill, and you'll just stay in the lane and hold it for a long time, and they can't kill you, and that'll be great for you. If you want to be more aggressive, though, you can get the End Seal. With the End Seal, you'll get power, protection, and cooldown, so you can harass your magical opponent in that way. But once you've built maybe 1 or 2 defensive items, you should definitely get the Hasten Fatalist. It'll allow you to stick like glue to your opponent and beat them down even more, and maybe even kill them if you need to. But also just lets you hit things and run very well, just because of the passive in general, so it's useful in a lot of respects. Eventually you want to get access, but we'll get to that soon enough. Now, after your 3rd or 4th item, you need to think about balancing out your build for dealing with the rest of the team. If you have a lot of physical, you should probably get some magical. But if you're fighting maybe 3 physical, so you build a lot of physical, maybe 1 magical item, you could consider getting the Runeforged Hammer, because it'll give you more power from your physical protection. Now, if there's just a good balance of damage coming your way, you might want to get some general stuff like Shift Your Shield. It gives you a lot of protection and power in both directions, that's good there. Same goes for Hide of Urchin, also gives you a lot of protection. Now, if you're dealing with 2 hunters, you can get Hide of Nemean Lion, that'll be very useful there. You're dealing with a lot of CC, you'll get Magi's Blessing. If you're dealing with a lot of healers, you can get Pestilence. And finally, if you're dealing with just a lot of damage in general and you think you won't survive too well, Bulwark of Hope gives you a chance to survive. So just find 6 items that you will feel will work well with what you're dealing with, and you should do alright. But remember, you need to get Hasten Fatalist at some point. It'll be very important to your ultimate to have it. Lastly, of course, are actives. Weakening Curse will allow you to catch up to your opponents and beat them to death once they have an escape. Aegis Pendant is a defensive move. Now, let's say your opponent has anti-healing, or they have a lot of pen on them, and you're kind of deep. With Aegis Pendant, which you can use during your ultimate, you can walk away from your opponents and not get hurt that much for 2 seconds. That'll be good there, you'll even regen, and maybe then you'll survive, so it's really useful in that respect. Maybe you're getting just too much CC on you and you can't even do your ultimate. Well, Greater Purification will help you with that. And finally, you can get Heavenly Agility to help you and your team catch up and just swallow up opponents, or just help your teammates get away with you. That's all you really do there with that. But that's definitely a lot of things to think about with Vamana on what you should build, and it does get complicated, but the more you play, the better idea you'll get, and you'll do well with it. Now, Vamana in Arena. My opinion is you should play him as a bruiser, so half armor, half damage, but speed is also very important to Vamana in Arena. So the build I think you should do is right here on the screen. You should get Warrior Tabi for penetration, then you should go ahead and get a Breastplate of Valor, which will allow you to do things sooner, but also give you a lot of mana and armor. That's really good there. Then you get Stone a Guy for even more protection against magical this time, and Hasten Fatalist so that you can stick to your opponents and beat them down with your ultimate, or just with your basic attack. That's the solid items you should have, at least those 4, because then you'll be very hard to kill. Eventually Shifter Shield, because with Shifter Shield you can go in, do a bunch of damage, and when you're low, you'll have more protection and you can just get away. And then Deathbringer, so you can have some crit on your ultimate, do a lot of damage with that, and that's just great. The active Weakening Curse will be very useful, slowing opponents down so you can just beat them to death even more while using your Fatalist. And also there is the Walking Aegis. With Walking Aegis, what happens is you'll do your ultimate, and then use the Walking Aegis, and you'll walk away. You'll heal up and not get hurt while you're walking away using that. So this is more of a defensive active right here, and it'll be very useful there. So your plan in Arena is to run in, do a bunch of damage with your ultimate and without your ultimate, and then run out when you're low. That's it. Hit and run over and over and over again. And you will put your opponents in very bad situations because they'll be really low on HP, or just get beat up a lot, and either you finish them off or your teammates will, and that'll be the key to victory. Vamana's weaknesses. Now, Vamana only has 2 real weaknesses, and that is penetration and anti-healing. Now, penetration is a problem for him just because he builds a lot of armor, so opponents need to build a lot of penetration to deal with him. And one specific god that really gets in trouble is Nemesis, because she can take away 50% of his armor for 5 seconds. In that time, Vamana can be killed, so she can be a big problem for him. Another problem for Vamana is anti-healing, and there's 3 items for that. There is Divine Ruin, Brawler's Beatstick, and Weakening Curse. The first 2 reduce it a little bit. Weakening Curse takes it out completely, so if you get hit with a Weakening Curse during your ultimate, you're not going to get any regen, and you better just get out of there. And another big problem is Changa. Changa has reduction with her 3, that plus Divine Ruin does 90% healing reduction, so it's essentially the same as a Weakening Curse. If you deal with a Changa or Weakening Curse, you need to get out of there, because you will die. So in conclusion, Vamana is all about being hard to kill and basically stalemating his lane to frustrate his opponents. As they get frustrated, they'll make mistakes and Vamana will crush them. As long as you play smart and clear well, you'll have a great farm and eventually become a big presence in teamfights later on. And ultimately, you'll win the match as you crush the towers all around you. And that should be it for the Vamana guide. This isn't everything to do with Vamana, just a lot of basic stuff here. Eventually you'll figure things out on your own and become even better with Vamana, so good luck with that. Up next is going to be Poseidon, and as always, if you want to join in on the discussion, it'll be at Friday night at 7 p.m. PST -8 GMT at Scarf Plays at Twitch, and it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that. But for now, that is the guide. I had fun. It's been fun watching and listening, and that's what's all about, isn't it? Having fun. Thanks for coming by, and see you next time.